Kids just say the darndest things, don't they? Well, not these kids. The words that came out of these tiny mouths are some of the most disturbing you've ever heard. Feel free to pause the video so that you can read every single hair-raising word. Have you ever wondered what God smelled like? Well, stay tuned for number 1 to find out the answer. Here are 20 of the creepiest things that kids have ever said. Our first entry is, Mom might be poisoning me. Moms all over the world have it hard. Imagine slaving all day in front of a hot stove just to make sure that Dad and all the kids have something good to eat as soon as they arrive from work or from school, with nothing as much as a thank you. But then imagine you're the mom and your 3-year-old sniffs his food thinking whether or not you're poisoning him. Where's the gratitude anymore? Our next entry is, nope, I died there. The Eiffel Tower is one of the most visited tourist attractions in the world. Most people would consider it a once-in-a-lifetime experience to visit it. It's especially big in Japan. In fact, there's a replica Eiffel Tower there right smack in the middle of a replica Paris. That's why I found it really weird why this 4-year-old thinks it's a bad idea to go there. But upon knowing the reason, I kind of agree with them. You see, they said that they were beheaded there back in the day. Now there's no record of someone actually being beheaded on the tower, but that doesn't make this kid's words any less creepy. Our next entry is the man downstairs. Old houses can really creep you out. Some grew up in one, and some of them belong to the family for at least 5 generations. I used to actually think my own house was haunted. My relatives thought I was crazy when I told them that I feel that there were other people living there aside from family. That's why when my parents decided to move out, I felt very relieved. My experience was probably exactly like what this kid went through. The only difference is she saw it with her own 2 eyes, even asking her mom who was the woman living downstairs. The words definitely creeped her out, judging by her reaction. Truthfully, I don't blame her. Our next entry is, I can see shady. My own mom had a weird belief concerning pet animals. According to her, there are instances when if a pet owner becomes terribly ill, the pet would somehow own the illness and die for its owner, making the owner's recovery somehow miraculous. I think that's the reason why a lot of other people each have pets of their own, primarily hamsters. I've never believed in this superstition, but this tweet is making me think twice. In this case, Shady the dog died to make sure that a baby is born alive and healthy. And it seems that the dog spirit lingered around, even showing itself to the child whose life it saved. I've said it before and I'll say it again. We don't deserve dogs. Our next entry is, I'm back and better than ever. Do you believe in reincarnation? I personally don't, but if you do, I do respect that. I just find it hard to believe a soul ever wanting to come back to Earth after experiencing heaven. Or, coming back from hell. Granted, I'm sure those in hell would surely appreciate a redo. Stories about reincarnation, though, like this tweet for instance, are a dime a dozen on the internet. But this one is pretty different. Normally, according to the stories, a person who dies gets reincarnated into a totally different family. But in this case, the kid said God gave him back to his old. This story is enough to give non-believers like me the chills. Our next entry is Funny Uncle Lucas. One of the highlights of my holiday season is a visit from one of my uncles. He's a stereotypical drunk uncle. Loud, obnoxious, politically incorrect, and dang proud of it. Many people find him immensely offensive, but I love him and think he's just funny. I just hope that when he eventually kicks the bucket that he won't pay me or any of my kids a visit, which is what exactly happened to the kid who was the subject of this tweet. This turns a visit from a funny uncle from pleasant to downright terrifying. Our next entry is The Eater of Worlds. You know what's lacking in the MCU? Origin stories. No, I'm not talking about how they first got their powers, but real origins like how their childhood was like. Yeah, we tackled that a bit with Gamora and we're about to find out how Black Widow came to be, but me as a Marvel fan needs a little bit more. And I don't want to read the comics, there's too many of them. Honestly though, with this tweet, you can take any supervillain bent on universal destruction and make him like this kid who was talking to her mom about destroying the Earth. Our next tweet is My Other Grandparents. Coming in to research this video, I was a staunch non-believer of reincarnation and still somewhat am. But honestly, after coming across many of these stories, I gotta admit that they may hold some merit. I mean, how else can you possibly explain a 5-year-old talking about his other grandparents and then proceeds to give you exact directions to their old abandoned house? If that doesn't creep you out, then I don't know what will. Our next entry is How to Avoid Afternoon Naps. As a kid, did you like taking afternoon naps? I think you probably hated it like I did when I was a kid. I try all kinds of things just to avoid it, but I gotta admit, I never thought of saying what this kid said to my mom. He was successful. Instead of the nap, he went to the beach itself, but I do have a question. Did this boy lie about the mean little boy, or did he actually see him? Our next entry is, I'm here just in case. Don't you just find it cute when a kid has a crush on ya? It's even more endearing when you hear them profess their love for you, and in the case of this tweet, even wanting to marry you. But of course, you know that it's never going to work, so you let him down easy. The kid would probably give you a look of disappointment and sadly walk away. But this kid though, he's got a plan. The troubling thing is whether he meant that the boyfriend died of natural causes or not. He made it sound like he was up to something murderous. Anyways, how would you even respond to that? Our next entry is, I drowned the last time. Have any of you experienced a problem giving your kids a bath? While some are just downright unmanageable in the tub, others simply refuse to take a bath altogether. This case, according to the tweet, is a bit different though. Every time the mother gives her 2-year-old a bath, she erupts into a meltdown if any water touches her face. Her chilling reason? She claims to have drowned in a previous life, yet gives us another creepy case of reincarnation. Our next entry is Psycho in the Making. Have you seen kids exhibiting subtle signs of what they are probably going to be when they grow up? For instance, kids who are extremely good at building all kinds of things using Lego blocks surely are meant to be engineers in the future. If that's true, then we follow that logic, what do you think this kid is going to grow up to be? From the scratching noise of the eerie message, I just hope we don't have another Michael Myers in the making. Our next entry is Keepsake. Speaking of children who show signs of being psychos in the future, did you know that most serial killers keep something that once belonged to their victims? A keepsake, so to speak. It's one of their most disturbing characteristics. This tweet came from what I think is a daycare teacher who had just tucked their kids down for a nap before proceeding to take a nap herself. The chilling words, plus the unnerving pat on the head, would be terrifying coming from anyone. But it's coming from the mouth of a 3-year-old girl, so it sure kicked it up a notch. Our next entry is A Tiny You. And rounding up our trio of psycho kids in this one, who, like the previous one, wants something of a keepsake, but instead of just wanting a piece of you, he wants the entire body. Well, not the insides though. Actually, I kinda get what the kid is saying. He just loves his mom so much that he doesn't want to be separated from her forever. But the words that he chose to express his feelings were both touching and petrifying at the same time. Our next entry is The Woods Demand a Sacrifice. Never go into the woods alone. Many horror movies start out that way, and also never go into the woods with strangers, as horror movies also start out that way. Going for a hike in the woods with your son, however, is a pretty safe thing to do. Well, not unless your son is this kid. It made it sound like he was a member of some obscure, nature-centric religion that wants to appease the forest gods. Obviously, the woods never got their sacrifice, so the guy probably turned back immediately after hearing those ominous words. Our next entry is The Guy is Back. Most kids have imaginary friends, and parents just need to live with that. They soon grow out of it, though, and most of them actually forget they ever had an imaginary friend. The guy referred to on this tweet, though, probably not an imaginary friend. Because you see, imaginary friends usually have names, and they don't usually stand on ceilings. Our next entry is Reading with Grandma. It's said that children are more susceptible to paranormal experiences. Hence the reason why people believe they can see ghosts, most especially of those long-departed loved ones. For people who believe in the paranormal, this tweet isn't really surprising, but it doesn't make it any less creepy. And that the fact that the 2-year-old hadn't even met her grandma, which died 2 years before she was born, is how horror stories begin. Our next entry is, Where are all the dead grandmas at? Nothing too much to say about this tweet, just a typical 7-year-old giving a stupid adult some sound advice. Again, never ever keep your dead grandmas in the attic. That's just not right. Now it's time for the day's best pick. Which is probably the creepiest thing I've heard a kid say. What is it? Find out next with My Little Hannibal Lecter. Yep, we're bound to find a little version of our beloved cannibal psychiatrist on this list. When this kid told his dad, I'm gonna eat you up, it sounded really cute there for a minute. That is before he followed up with, I'm gonna cut you into little pieces. Now, if he concluded the conversation with, I'll eat you up with some fava beans and a nice Chianti, then there's something definitely wrong with the kid. Before we move on, do me a favor. My analytics show that only about 15% of you watching are actually subscribed. Come on guys, what's up with that? Can you guys please hit the subscribe button? You guys watch my videos every day anyway, so you might as well subscribe and keep up to date with every video we put out. Our final entry is the smell of heaven. If what this little girl said is to be believed, she went further into the tunnel more than anyone else and actually met God himself. It seemed that this girl had met God and probably had a lengthy conversation with him. After all, she had a good whiff of what he smelled like. God smells like rain. Now you know. Have you personally heard a child say something creepy? Let us know down in the comments below. Also check out the channel's other amazing videos. As always, thank you all for watching and I'll see you all next time. Later everybody.